Hey there everyone, my name is BlenderHelixAlpha, as most of you already know, and I'm coming at you today with a very exciting and very useful Blender 3D tutorial. Today we're going to be modeling a realistic environmental rock that can be used in a game or a animation, either in real time or interactive, obviously. This is how the professionals do it, at least when using Blender. As far as I know, it is a very, very, very good method and procedure of making rocks, and let's get started. So Shift A, Mesh, Cube, and that'll get us a cube, obviously. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier and give that about 4 views. Okay, then we're going to add 2 displace modifiers just to start off. We can actually collapse our subsurf for now, we don't need it. And what we're going to do is give this cube a material, and just while we're here already, let's go ahead and tab into edit mode and click W and shade smooth, so everything looks nice and smooth. We can right click our cube, which is actually like a sphere now, and we can hit the period button on the numpad to focus on it. Alright, so now we're ready to set up our displacement modifiers. Let's go ahead and go to the Textures tab and add a new one. Change this from Clouds to Voronoi. And then we can change the size up to about, actually whatever you want, whatever is going to look good, but change it. I'm going to go with like 0.7 for this first one. Now you can use a color ramp to get the brightness and contrast just perfect, but I don't think we're going to be using that today. That's just about the intensity of it that I'd like. So let's go back to our modifiers and I'll show you what we just set up. So for our displacement modifier, what it does is it takes a texture map and it will displace the vertices in your high poly mesh to look like that. And because our Voronoi map looks like a rock surface already, we can set that up here. And that kind of looks like a really badly made rock. It's still sort of low poly, so what we're going to do is add another view on our subsurface, giving us a total of 5 views, and that's going to start looking pretty good. And if you really want to get intense, you can add a 6th view, but that won't be usable for a game because that is very, very high poly. So let's just go with 5, because we would want to use this in a game. So we can see that our displacement is a little bit too intense. So let's change the strength down to 0.04 and see how that treats us. That's a little bit too light. So let's try 0.08. Instead, let's try 0.0. Let's try 0.12. See if that works. We're getting there, but let's try something a little bit more in depth here. Let's try about 0.4. And that'll change depending on your texture map, of course, and everything like that. We can actually go back to our textures here and change the brightness, and you can see what kind of changes that's going to have to your mesh. So this is how you can actively deform a mesh using a Voronoi map. And let's go ahead and add some more detail by setting up our next texture, which is also going to be a Voronoi map. It's just going to be smaller to give us more details. So let's change this again to a Voronoi map. Let's mess around with this size here. Size looks okay there, and let's change this texture to that. And as you can see, this looks crazy. You don't want this. It's too crazy. So let's change that strength down to 0.3 again, or 0.03, and just keep building on it from there, and try to find a nice even medium to where it looks good. And remember, this is all still a cube. So we can actually toggle off our subsurf modifier, and you can still see what it is looking like without our subsurf. So this is fully editable and modular. You can create all kinds of really interesting features with this. To give you an example, let's go ahead and turn off occlusion just so we can edit a little bit easier. What we can do is just get our cube and just mess around with it, make some cuts here and here, make some extrusions, Let's go ahead and select a few of these faces here, select these base faces here, and then Control E, extrude. Oh, whoops, I didn't do that right. Let's just hit E and then extrude, and if we go back to edit mode, you can see what it's done. And it's just a really interesting tool to use to make some really interesting features. So let's go ahead and go back to our rock. I just Control Z'd a lot, so we can go back here. And what we can do is Shift A, and let's make a empty. And we can just drag that off into the side here. And what we can actually do is change our first displace. Remember, our first displace is making the most amount of difference here. So I'm actually going to change the strength on our first displace to like 0.5, just so it makes a little bit more of a difference. So we have this, and we added an empty, and if we select our rock, we can change our texture coordinates for our first displace to an object, and we're going to change that object to an empty. So wherever this empty moves, it will move our Voronoi map, so we can have different rocks every single time. So you can see if we scroll here, we can change the shape of our rock, and we can do the same with the other texture maps as well. So that is how you can get an infinite amount of different looking rocks. Pretty awesome, actually. I really like this tool. So yeah, guys, that's about it. If you want an extra added level of detail, if you're not going to be using it in an interactive game and you're not worried about the polys, you can add another subsurf modifier, and you can really see the really nice detail that it's bringing out in this rock. And of course, you can always, if you're not happy with it, add another displacement map here, and we can add another texture map, and we can change this to Voronoi. And if you want, like, you can either make it really small so you can have a lot of detail, or you can make it really large so you can get a lot of new and interesting balances of rocks. So let's go ahead and make the size 1, and the contrast about 2.5. And let's change our last displacement map to that last texture, and you can see that it's just totally crazy. So we want to change the strength down to 0.4 or 0.04, and what we can do is just mess around with that until we get something acceptable. And then we can shift duplicate this, or Shift D to duplicate this empty, and then go back to this texture coordinates and change this to our other empty. And now we have another controller to change up the textures on here. So this is again how you can make infinitely changing rocks. You can duplicate this rock and change the strengths, and it is just a really great tool. So if it's helped you out in any way, shape, or form, guys, I really hope to get a rating from you, and I will see you later.